What's up, guys? Coming at you from Chongqing. It has been a while. I am out on the road about to pick up a friend of mine. Many of my regular subscribers will know who that is, Li Jingjing, a journalist here in China. And we're just going to go for a drive around the city, or a bit of the city here. You'll get to see some of the views as well. And just have a random chat. We didn't really talk about what we would cover in advance, but I do think I'm going to ask her a bit about the Global South, because she has been interviewing a lot of politicians from the Global South. And their opinion on working with China and geopolitics in general. And I'll probably ask her about the youth also, because I have noticed a shift where the youth had very idealistic, very high views of Western systems, but things have actually changed recently because of the way a lot of things have unfolded, particularly recently. But that is something we will get into a little bit more after we pick up Li Jingjing. So for now, let's go and see if we can find her. Hey, what's going on?
Oh, wow.
Welcome to Chongqing.
Wow, Chongqing is a really amazing city.
Have you been enjoying it?
I love it. I almost want to move here.
Really?
Seriously.
Wow.
It's such a beautiful, livable, down-to-earth city.
Yeah.
It's so comfortable, and the entire day I take so many photos.
Right.
It's so beautiful because it's perfect mixture of traditional culture and modern culture.
Right. Do you find it's like a little bit more laid back than?
Very.
Yeah.
Very laid back than Beijing and Shanghai.
So, what are your favorite things that you've seen so far?
Oh, so many. Like 18.
Yeah.
Where you go down the stairs, you see the traditional building along the hill, and there's so many amazing stores. I keep spending money.
You know what? I forgot to mic you up. Let's do that.
Okay. But it'll catch my voice.
Yeah, it will. It'll catch the voice still. Yeah. Let me record it also. Let's see if we can start recording. There we go. It's recording.
Okay. I mean, Chongqing is amazing. I've been to 18.
Yep.
You will see all the traditional building along the hill, and there are so many amazing stores that sell. Each store sells different things, souvenirs, food. I keep spending money every store I walk in.
But it's a lot cheaper than everywhere else, though.
Yes,
right?
It's very cheap. The cars, taxi, traveling, and food, very affordable.
Right.
I've been to the bomb shelter hot pot,
Okay.
which is very unique in Chongqing because there are so many bomb shelters.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they turn those bomb shelters into hot pot restaurants and bookstores. I love the bomb shelter bookstore. I read books there. I ordered a cup of tea, only 10 kuai.
Yeah.
And I just enjoy just very chilled at the bookstore, and the hot pot, and the Huguang Huiguan, which is a building from Qing Dynasty.
Yeah.
Yellow building, traditional Chinese building, so beautiful. And it just came from the Luohan Si. I love how this traditional temple building is in the center of metropolitans. You see the skyscrapers surrounding this very old traditional Chinese building. So I love the mixture of it.
Yeah, that's classic. Did you see the chopstick building?
I haven't. Chopstick building.
Yeah, well, it kind of colloquially is called. A lot of people just refer to it as the chopstick building because it looks like it. They look like red chopsticks going through the building. That's a really cool one too.
I went to the Chaotianmen, right? Chaotianmen is like probably the tallest building in Chongqing. It's very tall, and it got some curve on it. From a really far away distance, I saw why they designed it with a little curve, because the architecture wanted to be creative. And then I got to the building, you realize they designed the area that looks like a ship.
Right.
So the building with the little curve, because that's the sail.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a really cool. Even though I'm from China, I'm Chinese still, I think Chongqing is beyond, it's probably not the best city that I love in China.
Wow. I'm just surprised that this is your first time here, that it took so long for you to get out here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no. The nighttime views, have you seen the nighttime views?
Yes.
Yeah, with the lights and everything.
Yeah. And people here love drinking tea. So you can go to some tea houses, enjoy night view, seeing the light shows, and just very laid back, drinking Chongqing tea.
Yeah, it actually, in terms of laid back, a lot of parks, especially on the outskirts, if you go, you'll see people show up. Like they'll drive there and they'll take these little tables and chairs and they'll have their tea outside the park, or they just love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're liking it so far. And so you've got one more day here, right?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that was so. All in all, how many days altogether?
4 days. I arrived at night, so the first day probably doesn't count.
Right.
But I booked a hotel that's really funny. I chose the room that decorated like a cave.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
It was like, if I'm leaving to another city, I want something different.
Unique. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a cave with a big projector. I can watch movies in this very comfy bed.
Right.
So I love the experience.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to see a little bit of Chongqing while we're driving around, and maybe we can talk about some other stuff too, because I know you have been covering a lot of global South stuff. And aren't you going to Brazil for, what is it you're going there for?
Because next month there will be 2 major meetings, APEC and G20 summit, and also before I went to Tanzania, some Africa, and some Pakistan, different global South countries, Southeast Asia. So, and also so many people from these countries are coming to China since 2023, I think.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. I'm just sitting in Beijing and meeting people from all over the world by the number that I've never imagined there could be this many. And they are literally from every African countries, every Latin American countries. Some of them are traveling, some of them are studying, some of them are taking media training courses in China. So they really want, I noticed there's a huge curiosity from the global South people. They want to know China, the culture, and the most importantly, they want to know how China made it. Because many of them share the same thing to me, saying, well, we are all colonized, we are all war-torn countries, but how come decades later you successfully became the world's number 2 GDP and advanced technology, very amazing country, peacefully, most important, peacefully, without colonizing, exploiting others' natural resources. So they want to find I won't say lesson, they want to understand how China made it. Maybe they can use the knowledge they learn to help to develop their countries.
Right.
And most of them talk about the poverty alleviation because there in some countries the gap between rich and poor are really, really wide. Some countries have the super fancy stuff, but it only belongs to very small percentage of people.
So the wealth gap is really huge.
Yeah. So they don't want that. But in China, they see there are gaps, but it's not as horrible as most of the countries. There are no 贫民窟.
Slums. So the slums, okay.
They cannot see any slums in any cities in China. They cannot see homeless people in China. They are shocked. They're so safe to walk around. In the sunny cities, you won't get your stuff stolen.
Right.
Women don't need to worry about their safety. So all these things that I mentioned were pretty common, even in the most developed country, the United States.
Right.
It's very common in New York, very common in San Francisco, Los Angeles.
Right.
But they don't exist in China at all.
So did they, I would imagine they had to overcome a lot of propaganda, though, to get to that point, because I think a lot of global South countries, they experienced a lot of the Western propaganda about China. So, are you getting a reaction from people from the global South also where you kind of see them saying, wow, this is totally different than what I imagined, in part because their opinions were shaped by Western propaganda?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think just 2 weeks ago, I met a group of reporters, journalists from different Southeast Asia countries, African countries, Latin American countries. There's one journalist from Ghana, and he told me the trip to China totally changed his perception about China.
Right.
It's like, I asked him how. And he said because Ghana was colonized by Britain, so actually all their media are very like pursue the Western value.
And the narrative, yeah.
Yeah, they were told everything about China is fake. The products from China are fake. China is backward. So they have this misconception about China. So before coming to China, he has this built-in misconceptions. But now, like he been working in China for like 3 or 4 months, he went to cover many major events, went to different cities. It's like everything is different from what the media told them.
Right.
And he also went to cover the FOCAC meeting, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Mm-hmm. He followed all the activities and went to the meeting, covered it for himself. So he saw the entire process. And then he read some reports from Western media, probably painting a negative light about this China-Africa cooperation. And he said, no, what you're saying is wrong because I'm here. I follow all the activities about FOCAC. What the Western media is showing is wrong. That give him some doubts about the Western's intentions on China-Africa.
Yeah.
And he, as an African, interacting with everyone, he believes China is really sincere working with Africa. So like he said, you know what? My opinion about China totally changed. And when I go back to Ghana, I'm going to use my ability as a media professional to change the narrative about China in my country, Ghana.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he'll be fighting against a big budget because I don't know if you know, well, I mean, of course you know, during the Trump era, they approved a budget for anti-China propaganda, millions and millions of dollars per year. But they just basically approved another one, which was 1.6 billion. I think. So you know about that one too, 1.6 billion. And, they actually don't need to, the recipients of these funds don't need to disclose that they're actually funded by the U.S. government. I think they probably know now also that as soon as they know that there is a narrative that is being funded by the U.S. government, that they need to be skeptical of it. So this is the next step that they got to do. It's like, okay, we got to start avoid telling, we need our recipients to not admit this. But this is what they're going to be going up against. No, I mean, it's just, this seems to be a problem that they caused on their own, though. And I suppose with these global South countries, we're talking about their impressions of China. A lot of them were also victims of Western propaganda.
Yeah.
But when all this money was invested in saying that, China's not good for Africa, or China's doing this to Africa, or putting them in a debt trap, or whatever it is they want to say, I guess you can only say that for a certain period of time. You can only say that for so long before the truth becomes obvious. That, okay, China deals with people, they deal with countries. If they can make a deal, great. If they can't make a deal, then whatever, they'll try again next time.
Yeah.
But they're not going there and saying that these are the terms, and if you don't follow them, you are going to be, your governments are going to be overthrown, or we're going to, destroy your country. So I guess it's just a natural progression.
That reminds me of like one journalist from Nigeria. I asked him, what's like in your country, the China's cooperation with your country? He said, in my country, in Nigeria, China involved in every sector in Nigeria, education, infrastructure, technology, media, but only one area China doesn't involve at all is the governance.
Right.
And him and so many other Nigerians totally appreciate that. They hate people keep coming here telling them how you should run your country. You should do this. This comes with a condition. You need to take this style, do this, install this politician to get the funding. But China never asked them to do that. Like education, infrastructure, they build everything, but they never intervene how they should run their country.
Yeah, they even go to the point where they try to basically change the entire way that they run their economy. I remember when the IMF went in, I think it was Malawi, or it was one of these places where they basically had to demand that they disassembled their grain warehouse warehousing programs and their food storage programs. And the whole idea was to make them more dependent on outside products as one of the conditions to receive these loans. Whereas when you hear reports of Chinese business people in Africa, you've heard the government here say directly to these countries, if our business people, if our businesses, they don't follow your local rules, deal with them according to your local justice system.
Yeah.
Prosecute them fully according to your local justice system.
Yeah.
Whereas with let me see if I'm going the right way here. Hold on one second. Oh yeah, here. We just did a big circle. I just realized.
And by the way, the roads driving in Chongqing is very confusing. If you get a wrong turn, I don't know, it leads you to another area, and I tried to find a restaurant nearby, and it shows on the map only 10 minutes walk.
Yeah.
Not very close from where I live. And then I actually walk on it. It's going uphill, climbing stairs, going downstairs. Like, oh my God, it's not a 10 minutes walk.
Yeah, exactly.
I love wearing high heels, but I cannot wear them here in Chongqing.
But on that topic, you have the government, the U.S. government, who actually has a history of going in and violently overthrowing governments if they don't allow their businesses and corporations to do what they want. Like, with Guatemala and the United Fruit Company. I mean, that's going back quite a long ways, but it never ended there. And so the other thing I'm really curious about, with these BRICS countries or with the global south in general, do you think that there is, because of this history of neocolonialism, using the dollar to hold them down, that there is an accelerated move or interest towards de-dollarization? Of
course, there's definitely a huge interest and effort to do that, but no, it's not a job that can be done within like 1 or 2 years.
Right.
It's so dollar is still the dominant reserve currency, but more countries are waking up to this, and they are trying to ditch the dollar. And when they ditch the dollar, the U.S. empire will be totally,
Right.
And I think, what the global south countries are waking up, another point is, like you mentioned, the neoliberalism, neocolonialism, it's designed to put the global south countries, developing countries, trapped at the bottom
to keep them down.
Global value chain, right? So they ask you to take this format of governance or put these politicians there. But what they actually doing is to keep you weak. So you're always at the bottom global value chain. You only produce low value added products, but you consume high value added products from the global north.
Right.
And so you can never outcompete the global north, because you can never earn the same amount of money. Your raw materials, your low added products, the income you get can never outcompete the high value added products. But China is the only developing country that escaped this trap. So many global south people are wondering, how did you make it? How did you escape this trap? So, well, I think the reserve currency is how the U.S. maintained its global hegemony, and some say, well, because of a democracy, capitalism is so developed, we never have major financial crisis, and when we have financial crisis, we can always escape it. No. The capitalism in America still exists, is because they keep outsourcing their crisis to global south countries. Global south countries in the past decades have been taking the crisis, taking all these, basically all their money have been looted to the U.S. So it's not their system is superior.
Yeah.
It's just their way to keep the global south down.
Yeah, and it's always been about stripping resources and processing it in the West and then selling it back to the countries that the resources came from. And I saw a lot of African commentators talking about how ridiculous it is. But whereas I've seen a lot of Chinese-based infrastructure projects that they actually are putting production in the places where the minerals and assets are coming from, where the resources are coming from.
Yeah.
And that's why I've also seen other, African commentators talk about the fact that after all of these years of dealing with the West, there isn't much to show for it. But when China's coming in, there's real productive assets being left on the ground. I remember seeing that video. There's a really good one. I don't know if you've seen it. I would imagine you have, but a TED talk by Dambisa Moyo. And she also talks about why Africa needs to look at China for models and systems of how to basically develop their country, escape poverty, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you brought up a very important point because the Western system is draining global South, draining their wealth, draining their natural resources, also a brain drain, draining their talents. I mean, all the students from global South, they will probably study in the West, but they stay in the West. They don't go back to contribute to the development of the country. So it's draining the global South in every way. But, and you know, the recent FOCAC meeting, the China-Africa Cooperation Forum, they achieved China, by the way, leaders of 52 African countries came to Beijing. Almost all African countries. Leaders of all the African big organizations are in China. Which other countries can do that?
Yeah.
Can gather that many African leaders? And at the end, China reached agreement with all the African countries that they would collab on education, medical, technology, infrastructure. But I think 2 points I think are very important is first, China promised that it will create at least 1 million jobs in Africa. And another point they say is China will make sure the China-Africa cooperation, the outcomes, the values will stay in Africa.
Yeah, there's a few interesting things. I think I was in Beijing during the time when some of those meetings were going on, and the road from the airport was closed, and I was asking about it, and it was for the African delegations coming through. And I was with one of my friends. He's an old Hong Kong guy. He's in his 60s. A really good friend of mine. He's actually the guy who got me into RVing in China. But he said to me, from the beginning, from many, many years ago, they always did that. When African leaders came in, they closed up all the roads and gave them a level of VIP treatment that they've never, ever experienced in the West.
Yeah.
When they come to China, they are treated with an amount of respect they have never, ever been shown in the West. And it's smart. You know, it's paying off now. But the other thing you mentioned too is there's so many people from the global South coming to universities here, coming and studying here. I even met a couple of Palestinians who one is studying dentistry, one is studying medicine. But when they're done, they don't really stay in China. And whether that kind of that kind of a system or pathway doesn't exist yet or whatever, but the benefit of that is, you know, China's not taking these people and saying, oh, there's some talent here, and then integrating them into the society here. They're going back, and then these countries are not experiencing the brain drain that you're talking about. So as more and more people are coming from the global South to China to study, and as China's education is getting better and better with science and technology and all this kind of stuff, that is also, in a way, creating a really ideal situation for the global South. Because they're sending these talented people back to build up their own countries.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you said, oftentimes in the West, they get incorporated in and integrated.
Yeah. Wow, the intelligence of so many global South students studying Chinese universities is blowing my mind. I met some students from Cameroon, Zimbabwe, Argentina, Brazil.
Yeah.
And they either already got their PhD at like Peking University, Tsinghua University, or they're still pursuing their PhD at these top universities. So they're very smart. They understand politics, they understand technology. And I remember these two African students that I talked to. The guy from Cameroon, oh, he's really smart, speak fluent English, French, Chinese. The thing is, his level of Mandarin is blowing my mind because his Mandarin is much better than many like Beijingers and Shanghainers or Chongqingers who speak dialect. He's very perfect accent, but he's not born and raised here. Yeah. So like you must put a lot of effort, speak perfect Mandarin, and also he totally understands the politics. He also studied in the West as well. And during his time, he visited dozens of Chinese villages to see how poverty alleviation was done, what policies took there, how they revitalized rural areas. And I asked them, do you see yourself one day using the knowledge you learn here to contribute to the development of your country, what they say, that's exactly the point of why we're here.
Right.
We want to understand the journey that China went through, how they did it. We don't want to copy the exact thing that China did.
Yeah.
But we want to see how like China made it, why in each village, each province, there are different policies. So, and I'm sure these students, when they go back to their country, they will become politicians, strategists, or scholars.
And the fact that they can speak Chinese, too, is going to be a huge benefit, because so much of the anti-China propaganda that travels the world is often complete mistranslations or misrepresentations of the source material they're using in China. So with these people, they're not just going to take it at face value. They're going to say, hold on a second, that's not what this document says. Hold on a second, that's not what the official said. You know, hold on a second, that wasn't the proper subtitles you put under, because they rely on ignorance of people in order to get away with a lot of the propaganda that they're pushing. They're not going to be able to do it with these kinds of people that are leaving to go back home. But you know, one of the other things I'm really curious about too is because I noticed, you know, before, especially when I first arrived in China, I was supposed to go that way. That's what we're talking about. The wrong turn, and then you're done for a while. I'm
sure you'll still take me to a pretty nice journey. Because everywhere we go, Chongqing looks really amazing.
So the young people in China before, they had this really idealistic view of the West. They had this really rosy view of the West. And oftentimes they would put it above their own system. They would think that, oh, that is the aspiration. That's the ultimate, what we need to be aspiring for. And I found that it's changed now. And I don't know if it's because of a result of the improvements here on the ground, or is it a matter of, for example, them realizing that the U.S. actually wants China to fail. They actually want to put China back into poverty. I mean, John Mearsheimer is one of the guys who says it the most straight. He says it doesn't matter if we impoverish China. We have to do everything we can to make sure that they don't exceed us. And when they realize the West is actually out to kill them, basically, I don't know if that is undermining their previous attempt, because they've thrown away a really good opportunity, because one of the things they've always wanted to do is they've wanted to convince Chinese people to basically overthrow their own system, to basically adopt, you know, make demands. And you have like people like Nancy Pelosi, who's been working on that for years in China. But now they've thrown that all away, because now the young people are like, you don't actually care about us. But anyways, like, what is your opinion on the changing opinion of young people in China, or even your transition too? Were you one of these people who are like, you know, oh, the West is so amazing, and now you're just kind of like, you know, there's things about our own system I think we need to appreciate more. Like, what was your story, or the people of young people around you?
I think the young generations in China, like my generation, the younger generations, are much more confident than previous generations. They have total confidence in China and its future. And one thing, like you just mentioned, is the actual development that we're living in every day is one major reason. And this young generation, they are well-traveled. They are multilingual. They have the experience of traveling to different countries, exchange programs in different countries. So they, at a very early age, they were exposed to, the real Western world, rather than the so-called American dream being portrayed by Hollywood movies. So I think by seeing the difference, they came to a realization. So in terms of my transition, I'm really honored and blessed of working as a journalist. So, I think I was among one of the young generations that was studied in the West, and I think the Western value, Western culture is much better. I was among them, but it totally changed, because after I became a journalist, working as a journalist, I got the chance of traveling to almost all provinces of China. And then most importantly, I go to different villages. I went to different villages in Tibet. We went some of the villages, remote areas together in 2020. I went to almost all corners of Xinjiang, Yunnan, Guangxi. So to see, I think being a Chinese doesn't mean you understand China or understand Chinese culture. And living in China doesn't mean you can understand Chinese culture. You have to travel and travel to different regions, talk to people from different ethnic groups, because Chinese culture is actually so rich. It has different size. It's so diverse. It has different ethnic groups. So living in one, say, living in Beijing or Shanghai, living in your own bubbles, you can never understand China.
Right.
So me working to go to different villages, I saw so many villages, how they got out of poverty before 2020, from a place that was so difficult for anyone to reach. For like many people in the village in this Guangxi area, they live in muddy wooden houses where the only food is probably potatoes, where for the kids to go to school, they need to climb mountains for hours. And we went to Tibet. Xizang is now the name of this region. You see the herdsmen, road nomads, living deep in the mountain, but had no resources at all. But nowadays things totally changed. Even the nomads, one or two family nomads living in some random deep mountains, they have electricity connected to their houses. They have water connected to their houses. To the village that was so poor, nowadays the roads were built to reach each household. The road were built to reach each household of the village.
Right.
So this is the dramatic changes the China experience. When I was a kid, there was no flushing toilet in my family. There was no running water in my family. But look now, we live in Beijing, one of the biggest cities in China. The water, electricity, all these basic necessities, daily necessities are so affordable in China. We don't need to worry about having no electricity, cannot pay gas, can have no food to eat. We don't need to worry about it anymore. This is dramatic changes. I know probably a lot of the rich Chinese in big cities, they always complain. They complain, well, why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Why the government doesn't do this? But actually, people living in big cities like Beijing, in Shanghai, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, they already have the things that most people didn't have before.
Right.
But if you actually go to China, the biggest change, biggest improvement that have been taking place in China in the past 4 decades are in the rural regions.
Right.
So this is what China is trying to do, to narrow the gap between the rich and poor, narrow the gap between Southeast China and Northwest China, regional gap and class gap. Because of I look at the concrete results, I look at when I go to the village, I start to understand what poverty alleviation means. I start to understand what all these policies that I learned from newspapers or textbooks mean. It changed the majority of people's lives, the ordinary people's lives. So it gave me I got, I have another level of appreciation for the government. So I think that being a journalist actually changed my perception about my own country and my own culture.
So with that said, there might be some young people who haven't had the same experiences that you've had, or who are, if they're much younger, they haven't seen the amazing change that's happened. I mean, China's always changing, but like if you're talking 80s or something like that to now, it's incredibly different. A lot of people might still take for granted in China the fact that what the system is doing. It kind of makes sense that it would be the rich kids that are complaining, though, because here, this is one of the places where, unlike with the West, where basically capital rules everything. It even helps choose which politicians are going to be elected based on how much they spend on their campaigns and things like that. when you have a country like this that has put so much focus on getting rid of corruption, that is a tool you're taking away from predominantly rich people. I mean, you know, poor people can't access corruption because they, you know, they don't have the money to bribe people with or whatever it is. So I would think that if anybody was still going to complain, it would be the ultra rich who, if potentially their family gained some of that wealth through the holes that existed in the system before. But so there might be two stages. One, people who don't like the system for selfish reasons, because they're on the other side of the coin there, or they haven't had the same experiences that you've had, and haven't been able to see.
I think you probably know much more than many. You know much more about China and China's policies than many Chinese people, just because you're put the effort of traveling and interacting with people from everywhere. And
have you been here? This is the place where the train comes out of the building.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, so I took a shot. I'm gonna publish it on my Twitter after this trip. It's so cool.
I was hoping as we're driving by we would see one come out, but we don't get the timing right. Maybe I'll have to paste your video over top.
Can you drive really slow?
Yeah. There might be one coming behind. No, not yet.
This is where the tram goes through the building. It's you know, there's so many tourists from around the world.
Yeah.
Standing at the platform, waiting for the tram to go through the building.
Right. And you see all the people parked down here. So this place gets really, really busy as a result.
Yeah.
So were you one of these tourists down here like yesterday taking a picture?
I was.
How long did you spend here?
I wait for like 3 or 4 trams to go through. And I hear people speaking English in the background, so they're probably also tourists from other countries. Waiting for the moment. And when the tram passed, I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. Finally, I got the shot.
Oh, there's a train coming there. But it's going to be coming through the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it will stop inside the building there. There's a little cave here, too. Did you go in the cave?
No, I didn't. There's a cave?
There's a little cave here. It goes down. There's lots of little shops in there and trinkets and stuff.
It's amazing how people in Chongqing build a city on the mountain. It's so creative.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting when sometimes you go into a building, like on the first floor, then you go into the building and you go up 10 floors, and then on the other side of the building, you're on the ground floor again.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, it's like the 20 floor difference. Sometimes it's the most extreme one is 22 floors, where on this side, it's the first floor. You go up to the 22nd floor, and out the back is also a ground level, like the full city and everything.
That's why in Chinese, Chongqing has a name called 魔幻之城. It's like 魔幻is like so magical. It's like a 3-dimensional maze.
Right. All right. Let's see here. Well.
But you know, Chongqing also besides those amazing architectures and the cultural stuff, Chongqing also has so much history in it.
It does, yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I love Shenzhen, and it's a great city, but it doesn't have the same history and personality that Chongqing does, because it's just Shenzhen is such a new city.
Yeah. Yeah, Shenzhen now it has a name called 打工城.
Oh yeah.
Migrant worker city. So everybody go there for work.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. This place ends up feeling more balanced because the housing prices here are way more affordable also. So when you meet a taxi driver or my coach at the gym or something like that, a lot of them, they own an apartment here in the city. If you were living in Shenzhen, it would be impossible to find, for example, a coach at a gym who actually owns an apartment in the city.
Yeah.
So Shenzhen does have more of a temporary feel to it in that regard, whereas here actually feels like a home. It feels like a hometown, you know?
You know, Chongqing became probably the #1 destination for both domestic and international tourists. And you see so many vlogs from vloggers from around the world on YouTube. And these vloggers voluntarily to come to China, and they were amazed by China. And you know, that's how Western's narrative, anti-China narrative, are slowly collapsing. Because so many people are coming here to see it for themselves, making videos, helping more people to see the reality. I remember when you started your channel, you, I mean, had this mission inside of you, like fighting, debunking the Western narratives, because like the Western media are manipulating the ignorance of Western peoples like about China. But now I see it's probably still, it's collapsing. So like, I don't know, how do you feel the progress of the that way people like us have made?
Yeah, I mean, I so the thing that really pushed me to start pushing back was the 2019 Hong Kong riots.
Yeah.
Where I could just see, because Hong Kong is somewhere I know a lot about. You know, I have a Hong Kong ID card. My kids were all born in Hong Kong. And so that's when I started. And during that time, when I looked at the baseless propaganda that was being used against China, I thought that it actually had a chance to hold China back. I thought it could fool the world. And that was worrying to me because, you know, even if people wanted to believe that China had problems domestically, whatever, okay, if you want to believe that. But the thing that I was really excited about was here's a country that is engaging the global south in a new way, where it's with much more mutual respect. You know, my mother is from a country that was destabilized by Western forces also. When they elected a government, when their people elected a government they didn't like, they basically created race riots between the two ethnic groups in Guyana, and then used it as an excuse to overthrow the government and install somebody who was a little bit more friendly towards the West. And so it was like, what else could you do? Like, there are people in the West, there are Western people in America who could see this and were protesting and were trying to say that colonialism is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this, but there's nothing they could do. There's nothing you can do. If the fact that your government doesn't actually work for you wasn't obvious then, it should be now, where the majority of Kamala Harris's supporters, want a ceasefire in Israel, and they are completely disconnected from the desires of their voter base. They're just not going to do it. The voter base, they're just going to have to put up with it. They're like, well, you know what? Trump might, it's going to be just as bad. Maybe he'll be worse. So we got no choice. We've got to vote for either a genocide party or a genocide party. I mean, so, thank you to those people in the West who tried to stop Western colonialism. But unfortunately, you now see that you don't have any power over your government. You don't really live in a democracy. They try to shape your opinions to match what they need to accomplish, but when it doesn't, they just ignore you. So I thought China was going to be a new power that could reduce the global South's reliance on the U.S. because there was another choice now, and it would allow this global South to flourish. We're already seeing evidence of that happening. But when I thought that the propaganda would actually hold China back and global South countries would believe that propaganda, I felt a great sense of urgency to put content out and to debunk this propaganda. Because it was all BS. Again, even if they wanted to believe that there was issues domestically in China, they were not real issues. But now I've gotten to the point where I feel like enough people have woken up and the West has shot themselves in the foot enough that there's a momentum that has built that they will never be able to recover from, not even with their $1.6 billion of propaganda. Maybe they'll make some headway, but it's just they've really lost the plot now, and I think it's going to be really hard for them to hold China back with lies anymore. So that's why I don't really make videos anymore, because I feel like if the few people who are left over still don't get it on their own, there's nothing I can do to ever make you come across the other side of the fence. That's it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think what you're doing is really good and really valuable, because now during this period of time where China doesn't really need to be on the defensive anymore, it's like you're still going to pretend like you care about Muslims in China while you're arming the power that is slaughtering them wholesale and basically shredding their children. That's absolutely ridiculous. But what happens now that you're not on the defensive anymore is now you can move to an educational format where you're teaching people about, okay, well, this is how poverty alleviation works in China. This is what we've done. And people are a little bit more willing to listen to it. Because while you're in this little, period of golden time where you're not on the defensive, you have people's ears and you're educating them. So when the next blast of, $1.6 billion worth of propaganda comes through, people are already educated because during this education period, you've already showed them everything.
Yeah.
While they were open-minded enough to listen to it.
Yeah. And I started watching your videos during the Hong Kong period. I think you are doing a great job making videos and sharing the realities that in Hong Kong. And I met so many people, either people from Hong Kong or expats living in Hong Kong. They also share the same thing. It was the rise in 2019 was a turning point for so many people woke up to that Western manipulating skills. They see how it was like, what it was like in Hong Kong. Some of my Hong Kong friends say they saw the riots in front of their house, and then they turn on CNN. They see the completely different narrative, different story. So after that, many expats moved to the mainland or moved to another country because the Western media is like lying. So it was a wake-up call. So like Western media really shot themselves in the foot. And also like the Palestinians, like you said, I think one thing they do the Xinjiang narrative, the Western countries sponsor the Xinjiang narrative, is they want to drive a wedge between China and Arab countries because they want to destroy the Belt and Road Initiative, which will go through Central Asia and to West Asia.
Right.
But look at now. Your narrative is not working. China and Arab countries, Muslim countries are getting closer than ever before. China was the only country that brokered peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, that united all the 14 different forces in Palestine. So, I mean, America's huge investment on fabricating the Xinjiang narrative is totally going nowhere. So they really shot themselves in the foot. And like you said, I became very active on social networks after you, I think late 2020 or early 2021, because the rise in Hong Kong and the pandemic in Wuhan. During those periods, there was so much anti-China propaganda, misinformation, racist comments about Chinese people.
Right.
So like I went to Wuhan as a reporter, and I saw the truth, how the people united to fight against this pandemic. So I thought, well, I'm the reporter, I'm the Chinese, I know what's happening on the ground. I know a language. If I don't tell my stories, if I don't tell what I saw, who else will tell this for me? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start to be very active on social networks to start share my side of story. And ever since that, there are more people from different countries start to be very curious about it. Sometimes it's just the very ordinary pictures about the blue skies in Tibet, the smiling people, our interactions like in Xinjiang. So they want to know the reality. And so many people were surprised because they never saw any images about the blue skies and people smiling in Tibet, because the Western media will never do that. So
there were, I remember when I posted some of those pictures of smiling Tibetans making the traditional knives and stuff like that, there were some of these overseas Tibetans who are part of these paid U.S. groups. They just lost their mind. All you need to do is post a picture of a smiling Tibetan in Tibet and they lose their minds. They just have complete meltdowns because they tried so hard to try to paint this idea that nothing but misery comes from there.
Yeah.
When actually they're the miserable ones who are really missing out.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've noticed also there's a big shift, whereas, when you started out, 2020 kind of a time frame on Twitter, it was, extremely toxic. And, we were kind of out there on our own. There weren't many people who were on our side. But now, I don't know if you've noticed the same thing. It has completely changed where you can put something out there, a positive story or debunking a China story, and then obviously you get all the haters, but now you get a whole load of people coming in, ordinary people from the West also, who are backing you up. You don't even need to argue back with these people because other people are doing it for you. They're like, well, hold on a second, that's a straw man, or hold on a second, that's not actually what's going on, and there's proof of it here. I don't know if you've seen a shift. I've actually even seen where I've seen people show up in my comments defending what I wrote to other trolls. I'm like, I've seen that name before. And then I look it up, and it was like somebody who was totally anti-China and who was arguing with me all the time before, and they switched over, you know?
Oh, that's great.
So what is your experience? Have you seen like a shift online also where the percentages have changed?
So the way I started, I debunk a lot of these fake stories on Western mainstream media. But nowadays, I receive comments from viewers from everywhere asking genuine questions about China, about China's culture, China travel advice, China's politics. So I start to make videos, try to answer their questions. Some people want to know how the different ethnic groups in China involved in the decision making. They want to understand the whole process, people's democracy. They want to advise where shall we go visit for my first time travel to China. So now there's a huge amount of genuine curiosities about China. So now I make a video to answer those requests to the to people who want to know. So, and you know what? I think now, because we also talk a lot about the Global South, now more people from the Global South are also being inspired. I remember one comment that really touched me last month. Someone left a really long comment on my YouTube. And he said he's African living in Europe. Mm-hmm. He said, after I read how you started your mission that I want to tell China stories, it really touched me, because as an African living in Europe, I see how the racism is exploding in Europe, how it's getting more and more unsafe, and it's like going crazy in Europe. So now he said, well, I think it's time for me to go back to my own country and start to tell my African stories. So like, I think that's really cool. Well, that's like, wow, you never, at first I just thought I'm telling my China stories, but you don't know, you're actually inspiring more people, not just telling China stories, but tell African stories, Latin American stories, and many of them saying, you know, we need solidarity. We shouldn't just fighting for our own goals or whatever. We should be united. Global South should be united. To change the global order, to have which make the world order much more fair. But, you know, this is not just benefiting Global South people. It's also benefiting the common people, ordinary people in Global North, because the ordinary average working class Americans, Europeans are also the victims of the capitalism, of neoliberalism. They're getting closer to poverty. Working class, think their life stagnated for a really long time. They're becoming more poor. So they are suffering from the unjust system as well. So this is what people are uniting to do is just change this. This is not just for Global South, but also for Global North. Imagine if one day high-speed rail can go through the United States, go through Europe. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Some of the most touching stories I've received were from overseas Chinese who saw my stories, and they said they were in a really tough spot because, you know, their country of origin was this terrible place. And then some of my videos made them realize that, it wasn't actually like that, and inspired them to come back to see their hometown for themselves and stuff like that. That was one of the most amazing things for me. So sometimes you don't know how your stories are going to kind of touch people. I think we've been filming for so long that the camera overheated a bit there. But yeah, okay, so let's continue. We are passing the Chopstick building. So now you realize this is the Chopstick building. You did see that before.
I see that, but yeah, designers in Chongqing are really, really courageous and creative.
Yeah. All right, hopefully the camera should be okay. I think it said it overheated because we're recording at 8K right now on the 360 camera. Yeah, because then you got to cut it down afterwards and crop it out. But yeah, so this is cool. This building is really cool here. It's really cool. It does look like chopsticks, though, doesn't it? It's it's just the chopsticks. I thought it looks like the game where you pull out the sticks and
So it turns out this is an art center, very creative. Yeah, and so. Me and my friend are discussing Chongqing is so amazing because it's so modern but so cultured, so traditional, and so also so affordable. It has everything.
Right.
Because some cities, say Shanghai is a pretty amazing city. Metropolitans have all the fancy stuff, but sometimes it's a little bit expensive in terms of, eating, and the taxi is really expensive as well.
Right.
But here, there are food everywhere. My hotel doesn't even have a canteen because there's no need. There's way too many food stands and restaurants
much stuff
here.
little snacks and shops and stuff like that.
I think it's smart because it costs less for the hotel owners, but you are also boosting all the local people who are opening restaurants. So it's so affordable. And Chongqing probably has the best food.
It's really good.
I love everything I ate here.
Right, yeah. Just quickly going back for a second to that topic of the shifting opinions. One other thing I've noticed too is, so it was interesting to hear you say that you're seeing more and more people from global south countries as a percentage of foreigners that are showing up here. But I've noticed that there's a shift in the kind of foreigner that is coming here from the West also.
I think so.
Or the kind of foreigner that's still here and who hasn't gone back yet. Before there were a lot of Westerners who were in China who were actually really negative about China.
Yeah.
And it's really strange. It was always like, what are you doing living here if you're so miserable here and you think it's such a terrible country? But for whatever reason, they were just people who maybe they had nothing else to do, better to do back home, were here. And I had a friend, David. He was introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, Carlos. Carlos said, "Hey, I've got a friend coming in. He's a book publisher for a socialist book company in the UK. Maybe you can hang out with him." So I hung out with him. And perfectly, the day he was here, it was a pub quiz night at a bar that a lot of foreigners go to here. It's a pretty cool place. And so we went there and we did the pub quiz, and me and David were on one team, and we lost badly. And afterwards, we had said, we were like, sorry, I forgot to set the story up properly, because before we went there, I warned David. I said, listen, I know you're really positive about China and stuff like that, but one thing you got to know is a lot of the foreigners here in China are actually pretty anti-China. But anyway, so it was, flash forward to we lost the test and the game. And then we had said to each other, we said, man, if it was about geopolitics, we would have killed it. And then the Irish guy from the winning team comes over. He says, "Oh, so you guys know about geopolitics, do you?" And, you can tell by his voice, he's like, we don't know shit, But he starts talking to us about all this stuff. And he was on the same page with all the stuff, too. And he knew about all of the different things that were going on. It was really amazing. And then, so afterwards, David tells him, he says, Daniel has a YouTube channel. And so he says, "Oh, yeah, okay, let me write it down." So he writes it down. And then this young American guy comes in. He is, he's probably in his early 20s or so. And he comes and he stands around our table and he looks at the paper in front of the Irish guy and he says, "Oh, Daniel Dumbrill, I know that guy. Yeah. He's like, Daniel Dumbrill, Glenn Greenwald." He's putting me up there with all these huge names. I'm like, wow. And you can imagine how surprised the Irish guy was too, because first of all, he thinks we're these guys that don't know anything. And all of a sudden these random people know about my YouTube channel. He said, "Oh." So he looks at them and he says, "Oh, wow, Daniel, would you like to meet him?" And he says, "Oh man, that would be amazing if I met him one day." He says, "Well, he's sitting right here." He says, "What?" He says, "I knew you looked familiar. How is it possible I'm meeting you in Chongqing?" And then he starts going into geopolitics, and he is this young guy, this young 20-year-old guy was so clicked in. He knew exactly how the world works. He knew everything that was going on. He was so informed, and it was really, really inspiring because not only from the point of view that I was completely wrong, that it isn't a high concentration of foreigners who are anti-China now. Now there's all these people who are like, they understand how the world works, but also to have somebody that young who's so tuned into what's going on. It kind of, it probably could give a lot of people hope that, people are becoming more and more aware and at a younger age. I mean, these are the kinds of people who are going to be so much harder to control with Western propaganda in the future. But yeah, a massive shift.
I think so. I totally agree with you. I think I remember some anti-China Western correspondent shared posting on Twitter saying, "Well, foreigners are leaving China. I mean, this is the China's shooting itself in the food because foreigners are leaving China." No, foreigners are coming to China. it's just a different, who make up this percentage of expats living in China are different.
Right.
Now the people from Global South, Global North as well, but those who want to know more about China, are interested in China, are coming to China. They're, like you said, they're so on the same page on politics. So it's much better. You know, since last year, I've been sitting in Beijing and meeting all the friends I've connected online, and they are from everywhere, from Europe, Britain, America, Canada, Australia, Global South as well. So I was shocked. I've never imagined I would meet all these people in Beijing, but now they're all coming to China. So there's so many people, and these people are, because they're interested in knowing more about China, they are making effort to connect with the Chinese community. Many of them are studying Chinese. It's difficult. Someone, if you came to study in China, it's easier to catch up with the language.
Right.
But those who came to work in China, it's a little bit difficult, but they are making the efforts. They try to speak a few words. They have at least 50, 100 words to speak in Chinese, and always try to travel everywhere, talk to Chinese people. So they show genuine efforts to connect with the Chinese culture, Chinese society. That's great, because before the change, we saw a lot of those white privileged people came to China making no effort to communicate with Chinese people at all, have no Chinese friend, don't speak any Chinese word. They just enjoy this foreign privilege, as a foreigner.
And they did get a lot of foreign privilege because foreigners here are treated really, really well. and there are people who took advantage of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. That really goes to say a lot too. Is, you know, when, and I've had even Chinese people, like, you know, some people who have traveled, they say that too. They say, you know, you come to our country and we're so welcoming and accommodating and stuff like that. We go to the West, and it's like, you know, you encounter racism and things like that.
Exactly.
And it's like, you know.
See, yeah. But so the good thing is the whiners left.
Yeah.
But the good people who have genuine interest are coming here. I think that's great.
Yeah, it is. It is a big shift. I think, you know, obviously COVID-0 challenged everybody. And so that people who couldn't put up with that and understand how, at least for sure in the beginning, why it was necessary for the greater good, especially when you looked at the percentage of ICU beds to number of people. And if they were more selfishly inclined, that would have been for sure the last straw for them. So I think COVID-0 cleared out a lot of them. Yeah. So it cleared out the virus and also these viruses as well.
Wow.
So,
nice one.
Yeah. Well, you know, a sign of positive things to come, but things are moving in the right direction. And once again, that is like one of the reasons why look at the view here.
Yeah, the bridge looks amazing.
Yeah.
The tram goes through the bridge as well.
Yeah, it goes on the bottom there. Yeah. But no, like I said, that's one of the reasons why I don't feel as much pressure to make videos, because, you know, people have kind of figured things out.
Yeah.
But this is fun, though. This is fun, doing these drive around videos and chatting with friends.
You love doing driving and talking videos, right?
Yeah. And the guy who I mentioned, the young guy who came in and saw my name on the paper, I'll probably do a drive around with him too. Because like I said, I think that seeing young people like that who are so, you know, clicked in and who understand, is really inspiring to see. And obviously you've seen this, Hongyadong.
Yeah, Hongyadong.
I think this is a really good place to end off the video. So everybody, you know, always sees this place at nighttime. You can kind of see it at daytime here from the outside camera on the left. And but we had a good chat. I think we'll go and we'll find something to eat. And you're going to enjoy the rest of your time here. And then maybe we'll do another drive around video in Beijing one day.
Yeah. And on behalf of all your followers, all your viewers, I invite you to please make more videos on our channel. People keep asking me, well, what's up with Daniel? Does he still make videos? I'm like, I don't know. Probably he's busy taking care of his kids. Yeah. But I know people are missing you.
Okay.
So,
all right. I'll try.
Yeah, be more active. Post more videos.
I'll try my best. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we will chat with you next time.
Bye.
Peace. Bye.